just like to review what we had said this morning. We speak in the Parsha about an Eved Ivri being sold into slavery, whether it's a Mocharatzmo, whether he sold himself because of financial hardship, or he had stolen and he couldn't compensate the victim and he had to be sold for his value to repay the value of the stolen object. So the Torah tells us that when he's freed after 6 years, the master has to give him a certain degree of severance. He should not be sent away empty-handed. And the Torah tells us, you should remember you were a slave in Egypt, and God redeemed you. Therefore, I command you to do this today. So over here, Rashi cites the Sifri. What's v'zacharti yever yiso v'nakti loch v'shonisi loch mibizas mitzroyim. When you left Egypt, I'd given you of the spoils of Egypt, ubizas hayam, the spoils of the sea. V'avato hanek ushnei. Therefore, you should do the same to the slave when he leaves your jurisdiction, your domain, your control. Compensate him. Give him the severance when you sent him off. Sheep, grain, and wine. So we had mentioned the Balaturim tells us the word Hanek is written mole with a Yud. Could be written without the Yud. The Yud alludes to the Eser Makos, that after the Eser Makos, we were sent off with Kli Chesef, Kli Zov, Usmolos. So there were three categories of items that are given to us: silver, gold, vessels, and these ornate clothing. So similarly, when you send off the slave, you should give him sheep, grain, and wine. 3 categories of what? Of items. For the same reason. So there's this corresponding factor. So when they asked, seemingly they're not comparable. The reason why we were given the compensation, the severance when we left Egypt, because we were enslaved. Innocent people were enslaved, we weren't compensated. We were reduced to what? To chattels, to nothing. So Hashem says to give them a sense of self and power and value, we give them severance. We can't send them off empty-handed. Gold, silver, and as Chazal tell us, there's a question, no Jew left Egypt with less than minimally 10 pack animals, mules packed, laden with gold and silver. This is the wealth they took out of Egypt. We deserved it. We were used human labor, slaves. So we were compensated. Here the man stole. And because he stole, he should have returned the stolen item. He no longer has it, he can't return it. We sell him to compensate the victim he had victimized. A person sells himself into slavery because he falls on hard times. He's paid to support his family. But again, even that he's not supposed to do. Because avodahim v'la'avodim la'avodim. You're my servants, you're not slaves to mortals. So again, so why are they comparable? Seemingly there's no comparison. There we were compensated. Why should we be compensated? He did the wrong thing. He brought it upon himself. So what we had said was that the Medrash tells us, Medrash Tanchuma, that initially, as it says, when was the bondage instituted? Only after the last child of Yaakov passed away. When Levi passed away, that's when the bondage was instituted. And that's why the Seforno explains the reason why we find Shevet Levi did not become idolaters is because he influenced even his grandchildren. They were under his influence. And because he had such a strong influence on them, therefore they never went astray, Shevet Levi. The others, that their grandparents of the original generation weren't there to be the role models for them, therefore they went astray. That's what the Seforno says. So now, when did the bondage start? After? But what happened? When there was no longer that original generation there, the Mishnah Chumash says that until they passed away, the Jews were revered and loved by the Egyptians. When they passed away, they said, we want to be like the Egyptians. We want to be like the Egyptians. We're no longer going to circumcise ourselves. Hashem says, if that's the case, you want to be like Egyptians. You're no longer going to be revered and loved, you're going to be despised. And that activated, and that caused the bondage in its fullest strength to be put into effect. So who brought about the bondage? We brought about the bondage ourselves. We the cause of it. It's as if we sold ourselves into slavery. We brought it upon ourselves. Because bondage didn't have to be physical bondage. It could have been spiritual bondage. So because they brought upon themselves, yet Hashem compensates them. He compensates them. So therefore, just as over there, although they were at fault, it was due to their negligent and the sinful behavior, why it came upon them. And Hashem's nevertheless, I give you severance. Identically here, although you brought it upon yourself, or we give you the severance, you should not be sent off empty-handed.